Sarah Martinez never expected her morning jog through the quiet neighborhood of Virginia Beach to change her life forever. As a nurse at the local hospital, she had seen enough trauma to last several lifetimes, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold on that crisp October morning. The sun was just beginning to peek through the oak trees lining Ocean View Avenue when Sarah laced up her running shoes and stepped outside her small apartment. She had been living in Virginia Beach for 3 years now, drawn to the area not just for the ocean breeze and military community, but because it felt safe. The presence of Naval Special Warfare Command nearby gave residents a sense of security that was hard to find elsewhere. Sarah's routine was always the same. She would run east toward the beach, then loop back through the residential streets before heading to work. At 28 years old, she was in excellent shape, having maintained her fitness regimen from her college track days. Her long, dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore her usual navy blue running gear with reflective strips. As she turned onto Elm Street, a quieter residential area with large houses set back from the road, Sarah noticed how peaceful everything seemed. Children's bicycles sat in driveways, American flags hung from porches, and the only sounds were her steady breathing and the rhythmic slap of her running shoes against the pavement. What Sarah didn't know was that she was being watched. 3 blocks away, a stolen sedan with tinted windows had been following her route for the past week. Inside sat 2 men who had been tracking her movements, learning her schedule, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The men were part of a human trafficking ring that had been operating along the East Coast for months. They specifically targeted young women who lived alone and had predictable routines. Sarah had unknowingly made herself a perfect target with her consistent morning runs through the same neighborhood. Meanwhile, just 2 miles away at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, a team of Navy SEALs was concluding their early morning physical training session. Team leader Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson had just dismissed his squad when his phone buzzed with a text message from his wife. She was asking him to pick up groceries on his way home, a mundane request that would soon play a crucial role in the day's events. Thompson's team consisted of 8 highly trained operators who had recently returned from a deployment overseas. They were in their mandatory rest period between missions, but their training never stopped. The team included demolitions expert Petty Officer Jake Rodriguez, communications specialist Petty Officer Chris Wang, medic Petty Officer David Kim, and sniper Petty Officer Alex Morrison, among others. As the SEALs were loading their gear into their vehicles, Thompson decided to take the scenic route home through the residential neighborhoods. It was a decision that seemed insignificant at the time, but would prove to be incredibly fortunate. Thompson enjoyed driving through the quiet streets after intense training sessions. It helped him decompress and reminded him why he fought so hard to protect American communities. Sarah was about halfway through her run when she first noticed something was wrong. A dark sedan had passed her twice now, slowing down each time. The windows were too tinted to see inside, but she could feel eyes watching her. Her nursing training had taught her to trust her instincts, and every instinct was now telling her to be careful. She decided to alter her route, taking a left turn onto a street she rarely used. The houses here were larger and more spread out, with longer driveways and more mature landscaping that provided both beauty and, unfortunately, more places to hide. Sarah quickened her pace slightly, her heart rate increasing not from exertion but from a growing sense of unease. The sedan turned the same corner she had, confirming her fears. Sarah reached for the small pepper spray she always carried in her running belt, grateful that her self-defense instructor had insisted all his students carry protection. She began looking for houses where people might be awake, somewhere she could run if necessary. As she approached the intersection of Elm and Oak Streets, Sarah saw the sedan accelerate and pull ahead of her. Her blood ran cold as it stopped abruptly about 50 yards in front of her, blocking her path. The driver's door opened and a tall man in dark clothing stepped out. Even from a distance, Sarah could see that he was large and muscular, with tattoos covering his arms. Behind her, she heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. Turning quickly, she saw a second car, this one a dark SUV, coming up the street. Her worst fears were confirmed when it too stopped, effectively trapping her between the 2 vehicles. Sarah's medical training kicked in as her body flooded with adrenaline. Her breathing became controlled and focused as she assessed her options. The residential street that had seemed so peaceful moments before now felt isolated and dangerous. The large houses with their manicured lawns suddenly seemed like barriers rather than signs of a safe neighborhood. Sarah realized that the very privacy that made this area attractive to families also made it perfect for what these men were planning. From the SUV emerged a second man, shorter, but equally intimidating, with a face that looked like it had seen more than its share of violence. Both men began walking towards Sarah with a casual confidence that suggested they had done this before. They moved like predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Sarah's mind raced through her options. She could try to run back the way she came, but the second man was already positioning himself to cut off that escape route. She could attempt to run between the houses, but the yards were fenced and she didn't know the neighborhood well enough to navigate it quickly. Her only real option was to stand her ground and hope that someone would notice what was happening. The morning sun continued to rise, casting long shadows across the street as the three figures formed a triangle in what should have been a peaceful suburban scene. Sarah gripped her pepper spray tighter and prepared herself for whatever was about to happen, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether she made it home safely or disappeared forever. The taller man spoke first, his voice carrying a false friendliness that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Hey there, sweetheart. We're a little lost. Could you help us with directions?" His accent was difficult to place, but there was something foreign about it that set off additional alarm bells in Sarah's mind. Sarah kept her distance, staying at least 20 feet away from both men. Her nursing experience had taught her to read people quickly, and everything about these two screamed danger. The way they positioned themselves, the way their eyes constantly scanned the area, the fact that they had coordinated to trap her between their vehicles, none of this was random. "I'm sorry. I don't know this area very well," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She began backing away slowly, keeping both men in her sight while looking for any possible escape route. Her hand remained on the pepper spray, though she knew it would only be effective if she could get close enough to use it. The shorter man laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Come on now, don't be unfriendly. We just need a little help." He reached into his jacket pocket and Sarah caught a glimpse of something metallic. Whether it was a weapon or restraints, she didn't want to find out. 3 blocks away, Chief Thompson was driving slowly through the neighborhood, enjoying the quiet morning and thinking about his grocery list. He had taken this route hundreds of times over the years, and he knew the rhythm of the community. That's why the scene ahead immediately caught his attention. 2 vehicles positioned strangely on the street, and 3 people standing in what looked like a confrontation. As someone trained to notice anomalies, Thompson's instincts kicked in immediately. He slowed his truck and reached for the binoculars he always kept in his console, a habit from years of reconnaissance work. Through the binoculars, Thompson could see a young woman in running gear facing off against 2 men. The woman's body language screamed distress. She was backing away, her posture defensive. The men were advancing on her with the predatory movement Thompson had seen in hostile territories overseas. This was not a friendly conversation about directions. Thompson immediately called his teammate Rodriguez, who lived closest to his location. "Jake, I need you to get to the corner of Elm and Oak Streets now. Potential situation in progress. 2 males, 1 female, looks like an abduction attempt." His voice was calm but urgent, using the same tone he employed during combat operations. "On my way. Chief, ETA 3 minutes, Rodriguez responded without hesitation. This was followed by the sound of a motorcycle engine roaring to life. Rodriguez had been working on his bike in his garage when the call came in. Back on Elm Street, the situation was escalating. The taller man had begun moving more aggressively toward Sarah, while his partner circled to cut off her retreat. "Look, lady, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, but you're coming with us either way," he said, dropping all pretense of asking for directions. Sarah made her decision. She turned and sprinted toward the nearest house, hoping to reach the front door before the men could catch her. Her legs pumped hard as she ran across the lawn, her running training finally paying off in a way she never could have imagined. But the men had anticipated this move. The shorter one was already moving to intercept her, and his partner was pursuing from behind. Sarah reached the front porch of a large colonial house and began pounding on the door, screaming for help. The homeowners, an elderly couple named Frank and Betty Morrison, were inside having their morning coffee when they heard the commotion. Frank, a retired Army veteran, immediately looked out the window and saw what was happening. He began dialing 911 while Betty grabbed their baseball bat from the hall closet. However, the two attackers reached Sarah before the elderly couple could intervene. The taller man grabbed her arm roughly, while his partner brandished what was now clearly a knife. "Scream again and this gets a lot worse for you," he hissed. Thompson saw the assault beginning and made a split-second decision that would define the next few minutes. He floored his accelerator and drove his truck directly at the attackers, honking his horn and creating as much noise and chaos as possible. The goal was to disrupt their plan and buy time for backup to arrive. The sudden appearance of Thompson's truck caught the attackers off guard. They released Sarah and stepped back, uncertain about this new development. Thompson jumped out of his vehicle, and even though he was wearing civilian clothes, everything about his bearing screamed military. "Let the woman go, and nobody has to get hurt," Thompson called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He positioned himself between Sarah and her attackers, using his body as a shield while calculating distances and options. The taller attacker pulled his knife and pointed it at Thompson. "This is none of your business, soldier boy. Walk away and pretend you didn't see anything." But there was uncertainty in his voice now. These men were used to intimidating helpless victims, not confronting someone who clearly knew how to handle himself. Thompson smiled grimly. "See, that's where you're wrong. Making sure people like her stay safe is exactly my business." He could hear the sound of Rodriguez's motorcycle approaching fast, and he knew backup would arrive within seconds. Sarah used the distraction to move further away from her attackers, positioning herself behind Thompson's truck. She was shaking from adrenaline but remained alert, ready to run again if necessary. Her pepper spray was still in her hand and she was prepared to use it if the situation called for it. The shorter attacker was growing nervous. This wasn't how these operations were supposed to go. They were supposed to grab the target quickly and quietly, not get into confrontations with what was obviously a trained military operator. He began backing toward their vehicle, clearly wanting to abort the mission. But his partner was more aggressive. The knife gleamed in the morning sunlight as he advanced on Thompson, apparently willing to fight rather than retreat. "You want to be a hero? Let's see how heroic you feel with a blade in your gut." Thompson remained calm, falling into the combat stance that had been drilled into him through thousands of hours of training. His hands were empty, but he was far from defenseless. Years of close-quarters combat training had taught him exactly how to handle armed opponents. The sound of Rodriguez's motorcycle grew louder as it turned onto Elm Street, followed almost immediately by the distant wail of police sirens. Frank Morrison's 911 call was bringing official help, but the SEALs would arrive first. Rodriguez roared onto Elm Street just as the knife-wielding attacker made his move toward Thompson. The SEAL's motorcycle came to a sliding stop, and Rodriguez was off the bike and moving before it had fully settled. His arrival changed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. The shorter attacker, seeing a second military-trained opponent arrive, made a desperate decision. He ran toward Sarah, hoping to grab her and use her as leverage to escape. But Sarah was ready for him. As he reached for her, she deployed her pepper spray directly into his face at point-blank range. The man screamed and stumbled backward, clawing at his burning eyes. Rodriguez was on him instantly, using a takedown technique that left the attacker face down on the pavement with his arms secured behind his back. The entire maneuver took less than 3 seconds. Meanwhile, Thompson was dealing with the knife-wielding leader. The attacker lunged forward with the blade, but Thompson sidestepped and grabbed the man's wrist, using his momentum against him. A quick twist and the knife clattered to the pavement as the attacker cried out in pain. Thompson followed up with a precise strike to a pressure point on the man's neck, and the attacker dropped to his knees, temporarily paralyzed. Thompson kicked the knife away and secured the man with zip ties he always carried in his truck, a habit from his deployment days. Sarah stood behind the truck, breathing heavily but unharmed. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. She watched in amazement as the two SEALs efficiently secured both attackers without seriously injuring them, despite the obvious threat they had posed. Frank Morrison came out of his house carrying his baseball bat, followed by his wife Betty. They had witnessed the entire incident from their window and were in awe of how quickly the situation had been resolved. "Are you all right, dear?" Betty asked Sarah, her motherly instincts taking over. "I think so," Sarah replied, though her voice was shaky. The adrenaline was beginning to wear off, and the reality of what had almost happened was starting to sink in. She had come within minutes of being kidnapped, possibly never to be seen again. Police sirens were getting closer, and Thompson used his radio to contact the base. "This is Chief Thompson. Need to report a civilian rescue operation at the corner of Elm and Oak. 2 suspects in custody, 1 potential victim safe. Requesting local law enforcement coordination." Rodriguez searched the attackers and found several disturbing items. The shorter man carried zip ties, duct tape, and a syringe filled with an unknown substance. The taller man had additional restraints and what appeared to be a burner phone with multiple contacts listed only by numbers. "This wasn't random," Rodriguez told Thompson quietly. "These guys came prepared for an abduction. Look at this gear. They've done this before." He held up the syringe carefully, making sure not to contaminate any evidence. Thompson nodded grimly. "We need to make sure the police understand what they're dealing with here. This could be part of something much bigger." His experience in intelligence gathering told him that what they had stumbled onto was likely connected to organized crime. The first police cruiser arrived, followed quickly by 2 more. Detective Lisa Chen, a seasoned investigator with the Virginia Beach Police Department, took charge of the scene. She had worked with military personnel before, and immediately recognized the professionalism with which the situation had been handled. "Can someone give me a quick rundown of what happened here?" Detective Chen asked, pulling out her notebook. She looked at the 2 secured attackers, then at Sarah, Thompson, and Rodriguez. Sarah found her voice and began recounting the morning's events. She described how she had noticed the sedan following her, the way the 2 vehicles had trapped her, and the clear intent of the men to abduct her. Her training as a nurse helped her provide clear, detailed observations. Thompson and Rodriguez provided their perspective as witnesses and intervening parties. They were careful to emphasize that they had used only the minimum force necessary to stop the attack and secure the suspects. Their military training had taught them the importance of proper procedures, even in emergency situations. Detective Chen examined the evidence Rodriguez had found and immediately called for additional units. "We're going to need the FBI on this," she told her sergeant. "This looks like human trafficking, and if these guys are part of a larger organization, we need federal resources." The shorter attacker was still suffering from the effects of the pepper spray, and paramedics were called to flush his eyes and check for any serious injuries. Despite what he had tried to do to Sarah, the medical personnel treated him professionally and thoroughly. As they waited for additional investigators to arrive, Thompson sat with Sarah on the tailgate of his truck. "You handled yourself really well back there," he told her. "Your situational awareness probably saved your life. Most people wouldn't have noticed they were being followed." Sarah managed a small smile. "I guess all those self-defense classes finally paid off, though I never imagined I'd actually need to use any of it." She was grateful for the pepper spray that had helped disable one of her attackers, but she was even more grateful for the timing that had brought these 2 SEALs to her rescue. Betty Morrison brought out a blanket and a cup of hot coffee for Sarah, fussing over her like the grandmother she was. Frank shook hands with Thompson and Rodriguez, thanking them for their quick action. "You boys did good work today," the old soldier said with obvious respect. More law enforcement arrived, including FBI agents who specialized in human trafficking cases. They took over the interrogation of the suspects and began processing the evidence. The burner phone was particularly interesting to them, as it likely contained contacts for other members of the trafficking ring. Agent Sarah Williams of the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force spoke with Sarah Martinez separately, explaining what they suspected she had been targeted for. "These organizations often study their targets for weeks before making a move," Agent Williams explained. "You're lucky that you trusted your instincts, and that help arrived when it did." The investigation revealed that the stolen sedan had been used in at least 3 other attempted abductions along the East Coast over the past 6 months. The suspects were career criminals with extensive records, including previous arrests for assault, kidnapping, and drug trafficking. As the morning wore on and the investigation continued, Sarah began to realize how close she had come to becoming another statistic. The professional way the SEALs had handled the situation, the quick response of the elderly couple, and even her own preparation with self-defense training had all combined to save her life. Thompson and Rodriguez stayed at the scene until they were no longer needed, ensuring that all proper procedures were followed and that Sarah felt safe. Their training had prepared them for combat in foreign countries, but they took just as much pride in protecting people in their own community. 2 hours later, Sarah found herself sitting in an FBI field office, going through hundreds of photographs with Agent Williams. The images showed various suspects connected to human trafficking operations across multiple states. Sarah's detailed description of her attackers had already led to several potential connections with other cases. We believe the organization your attackers work for has been operating for at least 2 years, Agent Williams explained as she spread out a map with red pins marking locations of suspected trafficking activities. They target young women with predictable routines, often professionals like nurses, teachers, or students who live alone. Sarah studied the map with growing horror. The red pins stretched from Florida to Maine, with concentrations around military bases and college towns. "How many women have they taken?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "We've identified at least 15 confirmed abductions that match their pattern," Agent Williams replied grimly, "but we suspect there are many more. These operations are highly organized and extremely profitable. A single victim can generate hundreds of thousands of dollars for the traffickers." Meanwhile, back at the SEAL base, Thompson was briefing his commanding officer on the morning's events. Commander Patricia Hayes listened intently as Thompson described the tactical situation and the response of his team. She was particularly interested in the evidence that suggested a larger criminal organization. "Chief, I want you to know that you and Rodriguez acted exactly as I would expect Navy SEALs to act," Commander Hayes said when Thompson finished his report. "You saw civilians in danger and you responded appropriately. The base will provide full support for any follow-up investigations." Commander Hayes also made a decision that would prove crucial in the coming days. She authorized Thompson's team to serve as liaison with the FBI task force, providing their specialized skills and knowledge to help dismantle the trafficking network. It was an unusual assignment, but the SEALs' expertise in surveillance and tactical operations could be invaluable. At the local hospital where Sarah worked, news of the attempted abduction spread quickly through the staff. Dr. Patricia Kumar, the head of emergency medicine and Sarah's supervisor, called her personally to check on her condition and offer support. The hospital had protocols for dealing with traumatized staff members, and they immediately implemented them. "Take all the time you need," Dr. Kumar told Sarah over the phone. "We have counselors available, and the entire staff is here to support you. What matters most is that you're safe." The doctor had seen too many victims of violence come through the emergency room, and she knew how important it was to address trauma quickly and thoroughly. Rodriguez spent his afternoon analyzing the tactical aspects of the morning's events with his teammates. The SEAL team conducted what they called an after-action review, examining every detail of the incident to learn lessons that might help in future situations. The key factor was Chief's situational awareness, Rodriguez told the assembled team. He noticed something that didn't look right and acted on his instincts. That's exactly what we're trained to do, whether we're in Afghanistan or Virginia Beach. The team also discussed the importance of staying prepared even during downtime. Thompson's decision to carry zip ties and binoculars in his personal vehicle had proved crucial, and it reminded everyone that threats could emerge anywhere, anytime. Back at the FBI office, the interrogation of the two suspects was revealing disturbing information about the scope of the trafficking operation. The taller suspect, identified as Viktor Petrov, was a mid-level operator in an organization that stretched from Eastern Europe to major American cities. Petrov initially refused to cooperate, but when agents showed him evidence connecting him to multiple kidnappings, he began to reconsider his options. His partner, Carlos Mendez, had a long criminal history and was already facing potential life sentences for his previous convictions. "We know you're not the leaders of this operation," Agent Williams told Petrov during the interrogation. "You're looking at federal kidnapping charges which carry a minimum of 20 years. But if you help us identify the people above you, we might be able to work something out." The breakthrough came when Petrov's lawyer arrived and explained the reality of his situation. Facing multiple federal charges with overwhelming evidence, Petrov agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. His information would prove to be a goldmine for the task force. Sarah returned home that evening with a police escort, feeling grateful to be alive but struggling with the emotional impact of her ordeal. Her small apartment, which had always felt like a safe haven, now seemed vulnerable. She found herself checking and rechecking the locks, jumping at every small sound. Her phone rang constantly throughout the evening as friends and family members learned about what had happened. Her mother wanted to drive up from North Carolina immediately, while her brother offered to come stay with her for a few days. Sarah appreciated the support, but needed time to process what had occurred. Detective Chen called to update Sarah on the investigation's progress. "We've learned that these men were part of a much larger operation," she explained. "Your case is helping us connect dots that we've been trying to connect for months. You may have helped save other women who don't even know they were in danger." The next morning, Thompson received a call that would expand the scope of the operation significantly. Agent Williams requested a meeting to discuss how the SEAL team could assist with dismantling the trafficking network. The FBI had identified several high-value targets but needed specialized surveillance and tactical expertise to move against them safely. "We're not asking you to make arrests or engage in law enforcement activities," Agent Williams explained during the meeting at the naval base. "But your skills in surveillance, reconnaissance, and tactical planning could be invaluable in planning operations against these targets." Commander Hayes approved the collaboration, seeing it as an opportunity for her team to use their skills in service of their local community. The SEALs would provide technical expertise and support, while federal agents handled the actual law enforcement activities. Sarah's first day back at work was challenging. Despite the support of her colleagues, she found herself constantly scanning the hospital corridors and parking areas, hyper-aware of her surroundings. Dr. Kumar assigned her to work closely with other staff members and made sure she was never alone in isolated areas of the hospital. During her lunch break, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Thompson had stopped by to check on her and to provide an update on the investigation. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, and Sarah was struck by how different he seemed in the civilian environment compared to the focused warrior she had seen during the rescue. "I wanted you to know that your willingness to help with the investigation is making a real difference," Thompson told her. "The information you provided helped the FBI identify connections they hadn't seen before. You're helping to protect other women who might become targets." Sarah felt a sense of purpose in knowing that her traumatic experience was helping others. "I keep thinking about all the women who weren't as lucky as I was," she said. "If helping with this investigation can prevent even one other person from going through what I almost went through, then it's worth it." Thompson respected her attitude and her courage. "The FBI agents tell me that breaking up this particular network could save dozens of women over the next few years. Your quick thinking and willingness to fight back probably saved your own life, but your cooperation with the investigation is going to save many others." The collaboration between the SEALs and the FBI was beginning to yield results, and both Sarah and Thompson were about to discover just how extensive the trafficking network really was. 3 days after the attempted abduction, Thompson and his team found themselves in an unmarked surveillance van outside a warehouse complex in Norfolk, Virginia. The information provided by Victor Petrov had led them to what the FBI believed was a major staging area for the trafficking operation. "We've got movement on the north side," Rodriguez whispered into his radio from his concealed position on a nearby rooftop. Through his scope, he could see several men unloading boxes from a truck. But more importantly, he spotted what appeared to be young women being escorted from one building to another. Agent Williams coordinated the surveillance operation from a command post several blocks away. The collaboration with the SEALs had proven invaluable. Their ability to maintain hidden positions for hours while gathering detailed intelligence far exceeded what traditional law enforcement could accomplish alone. Sarah had volunteered to help identify any of the potential victims, as her medical training helped her recognize signs of drugging or physical abuse that others might miss. She sat with Agent Williams, monitoring radio communications and reviewing photographs taken by the surveillance team. "We count at least 8 women, possibly more," Thompson reported from his position near the main entrance. Ages appear to range from late teens to early 30s. Several show signs of distress or possible sedation. His military training in human intelligence gathering was proving Crucial in assessing the situation, the warehouse complex was larger than initially suspected, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways. The trafficking organization was using it as both a temporary holding facility and a distribution center, moving victims to different locations along the East Coast, based on demand from buyers. Communications specialist Chris Wang had tapped into the complex's wireless networks and was monitoring digital communications. What he discovered was chilling. Detailed profiles of victims, including photos, ages, and personal information that could only have been gathered through extensive surveillance. "They've been watching these women for weeks, maybe months," Wang reported. "I'm seeing files on Sarah, plus at least 20 other women in the Virginia Beach and Norfolk areas. This operation is much bigger than we thought." Dr. Kim, the team's medic, reviewed the surveillance photos and identified several indicators that the women were being held against their will. "I can see evidence of restraint marks, possible injection sites, and body language consistent with fear and disorientation," he reported to Agent Williams. The FBI had to make a difficult decision. They could move immediately to rescue the women currently being held, but that might allow the higher-level organizers to escape. Alternatively, they could continue surveillance to identify more of the network, but that meant leaving the current victims in danger longer. Sarah provided input that helped resolve the dilemma. "As a nurse, I can tell you that those women need medical attention soon," she told Agent Williams. "From what I can see in these photos, some of them have been drugged repeatedly, and that can cause permanent damage if not treated." Her medical expertise combined with the tactical intelligence from the SEALs led to a carefully planned rescue operation. The team would move simultaneously against multiple locations, rescuing the immediate victims while capturing as many of the traffickers as possible. Commander Hayes had authorized full support for the operation, including additional SEAL teams if needed. "This isn't just about stopping these particular criminals," she told Thompson during a final briefing. "This is about sending a message that our community won't tolerate this kind of predatory behavior." The operation began at 4 a.m. the following day. Thompson's team provided overwatch and perimeter security, while FBI agents and local SWAT teams made the actual arrests. The SEAL's job was to prevent any escapes and to provide immediate medical assistance to rescued victims. Rodriguez positioned himself with a clear view of all exit routes from the warehouse complex. His sniper training allowed him to monitor multiple escape routes simultaneously while remaining hidden from the traffickers inside the buildings. Thompson coordinated with Agent Williams as the entry teams moved into position. Years of combat experience had taught him the importance of precise timing and clear communication during complex operations like this one. Wang continued monitoring electronic communications, watching for any signs that the traffickers had detected the law enforcement presence. His intercepts revealed that the organization used sophisticated encryption and code words, indicating a level of professionalism that went beyond typical criminal enterprises. As the FBI teams breached the main warehouse, they discovered a scene that shocked even experienced agents. The building had been modified with makeshift cells, medical equipment for drugging victims, and detailed records of trafficking activities spanning several years. "We've got 12 women in the main building," the entry team leader reported. "All appear to be alive, but several need immediate medical attention." Paramedics who had been standing by rushed in to begin treating the rescued victims. Sarah, monitoring from the command post, felt a mixture of relief and horror as the rescue unfolded. Relief that these women were being saved, but horror at realizing how close she had come to being held in similar conditions. The SEAL's tactical expertise proved crucial when several traffickers attempted to escape through a hidden tunnel system that connected the warehouse to an adjacent building. Morrison, the team sniper, spotted movement in a supposedly empty structure and alerted ground teams to the escape attempt. Kim provided immediate medical assessment of the rescued women, working alongside paramedics to prioritize treatment. His combat medical training helped him quickly identify which victims needed the most urgent care. The operation netted 7 arrests, including 2 individuals identified as mid-level organizers in the trafficking network. More importantly, it rescued 12 women who had been held captive for periods ranging from several days to several months. Among the rescued women was Jennifer Walsh, a college student from Richmond who had disappeared 3 weeks earlier while jogging near her campus. Her family had feared the worst, and the FBI had been investigating her case as a possible abduction. Another victim was Maria Santos, a young nurse from North Carolina who had been kidnapped while leaving work late one evening. Her case had similarities to Sarah's near abduction, confirming that the traffickers specifically targeted healthcare workers and other professionals. As the rescued women were transported to hospitals for medical evaluation and treatment, Sarah realized that her decision to fight back and cooperate with the investigation had directly led to their rescue. Without the information gained from her case, law enforcement might never have identified this particular trafficking cell. Thompson felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he watched the last of the rescued victims being loaded into ambulances. This was exactly why he had become a Navy SEAL, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves and to fight against those who preyed on the innocent. Agent Williams coordinated with hospitals to ensure that all rescued victims received appropriate medical care and counseling services. The trauma these women had experienced would require extensive treatment, but at least they were now free and safe. The warehouse yielded a treasure trove of evidence, including detailed financial records, communication logs, and information about other trafficking cells operating in different cities. The FBI estimated that the intelligence gathered from this single operation could lead to dozens of additional arrests and the rescue of many more victims. However, the investigation also revealed that this particular cell was just one part of a much larger, international organization. The real leaders were still operating from overseas, coordinating multiple trafficking networks across North America. The intelligence gathered from the warehouse raid painted a disturbing picture of an international criminal enterprise that stretched far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. Agent Williams spread out documents, hard drives, and photographs across multiple tables in the FBI's secure conference room, briefing Thompson and his team on what investigators had discovered. "We're looking at a network that operates in at least 8 countries, Agent Williams explained, pointing to a world map covered with colored pins. The organization is based in Eastern Europe, but has cells operating throughout North America, Western Europe, and parts of Asia. The Virginia operation was just one small piece of a massive criminal empire." Wang had been working with FBI cyber specialists to decode the encrypted communications found in the warehouse. What they discovered was a sophisticated operation that used legitimate businesses as cover, including shipping companies, employment agencies, and even some healthcare facilities. "They're not just grabbing random victims," Wang reported to the assembled team. "They're specifically targeting women with particular skills or characteristics based on orders from buyers." Sarah was targeted because someone specifically requested a healthcare worker with her profile. Sarah felt sick as she absorbed this information. She had volunteered to continue helping with the investigation. But learning that she had been specifically selected as merchandise made the violation feel even more personal and terrifying. Dr. Kim had been working with medical personnel treating the rescued victims and had discovered additional disturbing details about the traffickers' methods. "They're using sophisticated drug combinations to keep victims compliant," he reported. "Some of these medications require medical knowledge to administer safely, which suggests they have healthcare professionals working with them." The investigation took on new urgency when communications intercepts revealed that the trafficking organization was planning to accelerate their operations in response to the warehouse raid. Rather than backing down, they were preparing to move more aggressively to capture replacement victims. "They're treating this like a business disruption rather than a law enforcement crisis," Agent Williams explained to Commander Hayes during a briefing at the naval base. "They're already working to re-establish operations in this area, and they've marked several new targets for abduction." Among the new targets identified through intercepted communications was Dr. Patricia Kumar, Sarah's supervisor at the hospital. The traffickers had apparently decided that medical professionals were particularly valuable and were expanding their targeting to include more experienced healthcare workers. Thompson's team was assigned to provide protective surveillance for the newly identified targets while FBI agents worked to dismantle the broader network. It was a challenging assignment that required the SEALs to maintain covert protection without alerting either the targets or the traffickers to their presence. Rodriguez took position outside Dr. Kumar's house, using his advanced surveillance skills to monitor for any suspicious activity. His military training in counter-surveillance made him particularly effective at detecting watchers while remaining invisible himself. Morrison established overwatch positions near the hospital, where both Sarah and Dr. Kumar worked, coordinating with hospital security to identify potential threats without causing panic among staff members. Sarah returned to work under the protection of an undercover FBI agent posing as a new nurse. Agent Lisa Chen had medical training from her time in the military and was able to blend seamlessly into the hospital environment while maintaining close protection for Sarah. The psychological impact of knowing she was still being hunted was taking its toll on Sarah. Despite the protection and support she was receiving, the constant awareness that dangerous people were specifically targeting her made normal life almost impossible. "I keep wondering if this will ever really be over," Sarah confided to Thompson during one of their regular check-ins. "Even if they catch these particular people, won't there just be others to replace them?" Thompson understood her fears. He had seen similar situations overseas where removing one threat often led to the emergence of new ones. "The difference is that now law enforcement knows how they operate," he told her. "Every piece of information we gather makes it harder for them to continue their activities and easier to protect future victims." The breakthrough came when Wang's monitoring of digital communications revealed a planned meeting between high-level organizers and their American operatives. The meeting was scheduled to take place at a luxury hotel in Washington, D.C., presenting an opportunity to capture some of the network's leadership. Agent Williams coordinated with FBI headquarters and international law enforcement agencies to plan a complex operation targeting the leadership meeting. The SEALs would provide tactical support and surveillance expertise for what could be the most significant blow against the trafficking network to date. The operation required careful coordination because some of the targets were foreign nationals with diplomatic complications. Several suspected organizers were traveling on legitimate business visas, making arrests more politically complex than typical criminal cases. Thompson's team conducted advanced reconnaissance of the hotel and surrounding area, identifying surveillance positions, escape routes, and potential complications. Their military experience in urban environments proved invaluable in planning the tactical aspects of the operation. Sarah volunteered to help identify suspects from surveillance footage, as she had become one of the few people who had seen multiple members of the organization and survived to provide descriptions. Her detailed observations continued to provide crucial intelligence for the investigation. The hotel chosen for the meeting was a high-end establishment frequented by international business, travelers, and diplomats. The traffickers had selected it specifically because the diverse clientele it provided cover for suspicious meetings and the facility's security systems could be compromised more easily than government buildings. Rodriguez positioned himself on a building across from the hotel with a clear view of all entrances and exits. His role was to provide real-time intelligence on suspect movements and to serve as backup if ground teams needed additional support. Wang worked with FBI technical specialists to monitor all communications in and around the hotel, using advanced equipment to intercept phone calls, text messages, and internet communications from suspected trafficking organizers. As the day of the operation approached, Sarah found herself both hopeful and terrified. Hopeful that capturing the leadership might finally end the threat against her and other potential victims, but terrified of what might happen if the operation failed and the traffickers decided to retaliate. Dr. Kumar, now aware that she was also a target, had been moved to a safe location with her family while the operation took place. The hospital had implemented additional security measures, including background checks for all new staff and enhanced monitoring of parking areas and employee entrances. The night before the operation, Thompson visited Sarah at the safe house where she was staying. "I want you to know that regardless of what happens tomorrow, you've already made a difference that will last for years," he told her. "The information you've provided has helped us understand how these networks operate, and that knowledge will protect future victims even if some of the current suspects escape." Sarah appreciated his words, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her life would never truly return to normal until the entire organization was dismantled. The experience had changed her in fundamental ways, making her more aware of the dangers that existed in what she had previously considered a safe community. The operation was scheduled to begin at dawn, with simultaneous raids planned in 3 cities. The success or failure of this coordinated effort would determine whether the trafficking network could be significantly disrupted or whether it would simply adapt and continue operating in new locations. At 5:47 a.m. on a gray Washington morning, the coordinated operation against the trafficking network's leadership began simultaneously in 3 cities. Thompson monitored communications from the FBI command post, while his team provided overwatch at the luxury hotel, where the traffickers' meeting was scheduled to take place. Rodriguez, positioned on the roof across from the hotel, watched through his scope as FBI agents in plain clothes took positions throughout the lobby and surrounding areas. "Multiple targets have arrived," he reported quietly into his radio. "I count at least 6 individuals matching our suspect descriptions. The targets included Dmitry Volkov, believed to be the Eastern European coordinator for North American operations, and Sandra Chen, a naturalized American citizen who managed financial transfers for the organization. Both had been under surveillance for months, but this was the first time they had been caught in the same location. Wang's electronic surveillance was picking up encrypted communications between the suspects and their overseas controllers. The conversations, conducted in multiple languages, confirmed that this was indeed a high-level planning meeting for expanding operations along the entire East Coast. "They're discussing numbers and locations," Wang reported to Agent Williams. "It sounds like they're planning to establish new cells in at least 5 major cities, with Virginia Beach and Norfolk being just the beginning." Sarah watched the operation unfold from the FBI command center, her heart racing as she recognized several faces from surveillance photos. These were the people who had ordered her abduction, who had planned to sell her to the highest bidder. Seeing them captured would provide closure she desperately needed. The arrest teams moved with precision timing. As Volkov and Chen entered a private conference room with 4 other suspects, FBI agents positioned throughout the hotel received the go signal. Years of planning and investigation came together in a carefully choreographed operation. Thompson coordinated perimeter security as federal agents entered the hotel and moved toward the conference room. His job was to ensure that no suspects escaped and that no civilians were endangered during the arrests. "FBI, everyone remain calm and stay seated," Agent Williams announced as her team entered the conference room where the traffickers were meeting. The suspects' shocked expressions made it clear they had not anticipated that law enforcement had penetrated their security measures. Volkov attempted to destroy a laptop computer, but Kim, who had positioned himself near the conference room, moved quickly to prevent the destruction of evidence. His medical training had taught him to react quickly in crisis situations, and he secured the computer before Volkov could damage it. Rodriguez watched through his scope as several suspects in the hotel lobby attempted to leave casually, apparently hoping to avoid detection. 3 targets moving toward the main exit, he reported, and ground teams immediately moved to intercept them. Wang's monitoring equipment captured frantic communications as the arrests began. Overseas controllers were trying to warn other cells about the law enforcement operation, but the communications had been anticipated, and FBI agents were already moving against suspected locations in other cities. Within 20 minutes, 12 individuals had been arrested at the hotel, including several who were not on the original target list but who were identified through their communications and behavior during the operation. The operation had netted far more suspects than initially expected. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of relief as she watched the arrest footage on monitors in the command center. These were the people who had terrorized her and countless other women. Seeing them in handcuffs, facing justice, provided a sense of closure she had been desperate to achieve. The simultaneous raids in Miami and Chicago were equally successful, resulting in additional arrests and the rescue of more trafficking victims. The coordinated operation had effectively decapitated the organization's North American leadership structure. Dr. Kumar was able to return to her home and normal routine, as the arrests had eliminated the immediate threat against her and other targeted healthcare workers. The hospital implemented new security procedures based on lessons learned from the investigation. Thompson and his team received formal recognition from both the FBI and their own command structure for their crucial role in dismantling the trafficking network. More importantly to Thompson, they had protected their community and saved lives. Rodriguez returned to his normal training routine with the SEAL team, but he maintained contact with local law enforcement agencies to provide ongoing consultation on surveillance techniques and tactical operations. Wang's expertise in electronic intelligence gathering led to offers from multiple federal agencies, but he chose to remain with his SEAL team while occasionally providing specialized consultation on cybercrime investigations. Kim continued his medical training while serving with the team, but his experience treating trafficking victims inspired him to volunteer with organizations that provided medical care to rescued victims of human trafficking. Agent Williams was promoted within the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force and became a national expert on dismantling international criminal organizations. The successful operation became a model for future investigations. Sarah gradually returned to her normal life and work routine, though the experience had changed her permanently. She became an advocate for human trafficking awareness and worked with law enforcement agencies to train other potential targets on recognizing and avoiding dangerous situations. The financial investigation revealed that the trafficking network had generated millions of dollars in illegal profits over several years. Asset forfeiture proceedings recovered substantial funds that were used to provide services for rescued victims and to fund additional anti-trafficking operations. 6 months after the arrests, Sarah testified at the trial of Dmitry Volkov and other key organizers. Her detailed testimony about the attempted abduction and the evidence of the broader conspiracy helped secure convictions that resulted in life sentences. For the trafficking leaders, the warehouse facility in Norfolk was converted into a training center for law enforcement. Agencies learning to combat human trafficking. The site where women had been held captive became a place where law enforcement officers learned to rescue future victims. Frank and Betty Morrison, the elderly couple who had called 911 during Sarah's rescue, became community advocates for neighborhood watch programs and emergency preparedness. Their quick thinking during the crisis had contributed to the successful rescue and eventual dismantling of the trafficking network. Dr. Patricia Kumar implemented new safety protocols at the hospital based on lessons learned from the investigation. These procedures were shared with medical facilities throughout the region, helping to protect other healthcare workers from similar threats. Thompson was promoted to senior chief and continued leading his SEAL team, but the experience of protecting his local community remained one of the most meaningful missions of his career. The operation demonstrated that military skills could be effectively applied to protecting civilians at home, as well as overseas. 2 years later, Sarah married a fellow nurse she met during her recovery process. Thompson and several of his teammates attended the wedding. Having formed lasting friendships with Sarah and others involved in the case, the international investigation that grew out of the Virginia Beach case eventually led to the dismantling of trafficking networks in 8 countries and the rescue of more than 200 victims. Sarah's decision to fight back during her attempted abduction had started a chain of events that saved countless lives. Sarah often reflected on how a routine morning jog had led to such a dramatic change in her life and the lives of so many others. She realized that ordinary people doing ordinary things could make extraordinary differences when they chose to stand up against evil and help their communities. The case became a landmark in interagency cooperation between military and civilian law enforcement, demonstrating how different organizations could work together effectively to protect American communities from international criminal threats. Thompson continued to drive through the neighborhoods around Virginia Beach during his off-duty time, but now it was with the satisfaction of knowing that his community was safer because of the actions he and his team had taken when they were needed most.